You sit at the edge of the bed in the morning, the house is quiet, and you go through the routine. You wash your hands, you dry them on the towel. You take the little plastic device out of its black zippered case. You slide the test strip in, wait for the drop icon to blink on the screen, and you press the lancet against the side of your finger, a tiny sting, a drop of blood, a 5-second countdown, and then the number appears. For a long time, that number dictated my entire day. I would look down at that little screen and see a 178 or a 185 or sometimes a number creeping dangerously close to 200. And I would just sit there in the quiet of the bedroom, feeling a heavy, dark wave of defeat wash over me. I am 81 years old. My name is Harold Bennett. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, but I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in a time and a place where you worked hard, you didn't complain, and you fixed what was broken. I spent my life in community health education, trying to translate complicated medical jargon into plain English so everyday folks could actually use it. I thought I knew how the body worked. I thought I knew the rules of the game. But when it came to my own blood sugar a few years ago, I felt like I was playing a game where someone kept changing the rules in the middle of the night. I was doing everything exactly by the book. I had given up the bread I loved. I stopped eating the pasta dishes my late wife Margaret used to make on Sunday afternoons. I was measuring out portions of brown rice like it was gold dust. I was eating plain chicken breast and steamed broccoli until I couldn't stand the sight of green vegetables. I was taking my metformin with the absolute precision of a Swiss watch. I was walking the neighborhood every single evening as the Arizona sun went down, making sure I got the movement my doctor told me I needed. And despite all of that discipline, despite doing every single thing right, my morning fasting numbers were a mess. Tuesday it would be 192. Wednesday maybe 178. Thursday back up to 201. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes with fighting a battle you can't seem to win. It is not just the physical tiredness, though, that is certainly there. It is a deep bone-level weariness. You look at the food on your plate and you resent it. You look at the medication bottles on the bathroom counter and you wonder what the point is. You feel like you are doing all the work, making all the sacrifices, and the foundation of your health is still cracking beneath your feet. I remember sitting in my armchair in the living room one afternoon, staring out the window at the dry yard, feeling a very quiet, very real fear. It was the fear of losing my independence. After 60, the small things are what matter most. A creeping blood sugar number isn't just a clinical statistic. It is a threat to your mobility. It is a threat to your vision. It is a threat to your ability to live alone, to drive your car, to be a person who helps others instead of a person who constantly needs to be helped. I assumed my pancreas was simply giving up. I assumed my age had finally caught up with me and that the long, slow decline had officially begun. I was ready to accept that my medication was going to be doubled and then tripled, and that eventually I would be managing insulin needles, a thought that made my stomach turn. Then my daughter Laura came over for a visit. Laura is a registered nurse up in Phoenix. She has been in hospitals for decades. She has my eyes, but she has her mother's quiet, unrelenting observation skills. Margaret used to be able to look at me from across the kitchen and know exactly what was bothering me before I even knew it myself. Laura has that same gift. She sat at my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. The Arizona heat was already building outside. I had my logbook out, the one where I meticulously wrote down every meal and every glucose reading. I slid it across the table to her. I wanted her to see it. I wanted her to validate my frustration. I wanted her to tell me that I was doing everything perfectly and that the situation was just unfair. She traced her finger down the columns of numbers. She looked at my perfect diet logs. She looked at my medication schedule. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just watched me. I was sitting there drinking a large mug of black coffee. Finally, she closed the book, pushed it back across the table, and asked me a question that completely caught me off guard. She didn't ask about carbohydrates. She didn't ask about my evening walks. She asked, "Dad, walk me through exactly what you drink in a day." Not what you eat, what you drink. I thought it was a ridiculous question. I told her the truth. I told her I have my coffee when I wake up. I have a small glass of water when I take my morning pills. I might have a glass of iced tea with lunch. And I have another glass of water with dinner. She looked at my coffee mug, and then she looked at me, and she said, "Dad, you are completely, chronically dried out. You are running an old engine with absolutely no oil, and you are wondering why it's overheating." I told her I wasn't thirsty. I told her that if my body needed water, it would tell me. That is what we are all taught, isn't it? Drink when you are thirsty. Your body knows what it needs. But Laura explained something to me that morning that completely shifted my understanding of what happens to us as we age. The body doesn't ask twice in the same way. The signals we relied on in our 30s and 40s do not work the same way in our 70s and 80s. She explained that as we get older, our sense of thirst becomes dramatically impaired. It is a biological fact. By the time you reach 65, your brain's thirst response can be delayed by up to an hour and a half after your body actually reaches a state of dehydration. You could be medically dehydrated, your blood volume could be dropping, your cells could be begging for fluid, and your mouth will not feel dry. Your brain will not send the signal. Don't wait to feel it before you act. That is the rule of aging that nobody puts on a billboard. I was walking around Scottsdale, Arizona, a place where the air pulls moisture out of your skin just by standing outside, and I was giving my body maybe 16 ounces of actual water a day. At my weight, I needed closer to 80 or 90 ounces just to break even. But what really made me sit up and pay attention was when she explained what this chronic, invisible dehydration was doing to my blood sugar. She drew a picture for me. Not a medical chart, but a picture of how the body handles insulin. She told me to think about a sponge. If you take a brand new, moist sponge and you wipe it across a wet counter, it pulls the liquid right up. Instantly. It absorbs whatever it touches. But if you take an old sponge, one that has been sitting on the windowsill baking in the sun for 3 days, it gets hard. It gets rigid. It shrinks. If you run that hard, dried-out sponge under the faucet, the water doesn't soak in at first. It just bounces right off the rigid surface and runs down the drain. Our cell membranes work the exact same way. When we are properly hydrated, the walls of our cells are flexible and moist. When the pancreas releases insulin, that insulin travels to the cell, knocks on the door, and the flexible cell membrane easily opens up to let the glucose inside, where it is burned for energy. But when you are chronically dehydrated, even by just a small percentage, those cell membranes become rigid. They become like that dried out sponge. The insulin is still there. Your pancreas is still making it. Or maybe you are injecting it. The glucose is still there, floating in your blood. The insulin knocks on the door of the cell, trying to deliver the sugar. But the cell membrane is stiff, tight, and rigid. The receptors essentially shut down. The door is locked. So the glucose has nowhere to go. It can't get into the cell to give you energy, which is why you feel so incredibly tired all the time. Instead, it just stays trapped in your bloodstream, circling around and around. And when you check your blood sugar the next morning, the number is sky high. It wasn't because I ate the wrong thing. It wasn't because I forgot my medication. It was because my cells were physically incapable of accepting the sugar. The doors were swollen shut from a lack of water. I sat at my table looking at my coffee, letting that sink in. Decades of working in health education, decades of reading labels, and I had completely ignored the most fundamental element of human biology. I had been punishing myself over half a cup of brown rice while my entire internal plumbing system was bone dry. Laura told me there were 3 specific mistakes I was making, mistakes that almost everyone our age makes with liquids. And she was right. I was guilty of all 3. The first mistake was counting my coffee and my iced tea as hydration. I assumed that because they were wet and because they were made with water, they counted toward my daily intake. That is a very common illusion. Coffee and tea are mild diuretics. They tell your kidneys to release water. Laura explained it using a financial metaphor. She said, "Imagine you have a checking account that needs $1,000 in it to avoid an overdraft fee. You go to the bank and you deposit $1,000. But the moment you make the deposit, the bank automatically withdraws $600 for a hidden fee. You put the money in, but you are still short. That is what coffee does to your hydration. For every cup you drink, you lose more than half of that volume through increased urination shortly after. The rest of the liquid your body needs to process that caffeine is pulled straight from your existing water stores. I thought I was hydrating with my morning coffee. I was actually putting my body into a deeper drought right at the start of the day. The second mistake was the temperature of the water I did drink. Living in Arizona, ice is practically a religion. You fill the glass to the brim with cubes from the refrigerator dispenser, and you pour the water over it until the glass is sweating. It feels refreshing. It feels like exactly what you need. But physiologically, it is a shock to an older system. When you drink ice-cold water, especially on an empty stomach in the morning, your core temperature drops rapidly. Your body panics. It thinks it is freezing. To protect your core, your blood vessels immediately constrict. They shrink down tight. When your blood vessels constrict, your circulation slows down dramatically. And remember that insulin and that glucose need to travel through your bloodstream to reach your cells. By drinking ice water, I was essentially causing a traffic jam in my own veins. I was making it harder for the insulin to get where it needed to go. Worse than that, the shock of cold water triggers a mild stress response in the digestive system. When the body gets stressed, it releases cortisol. Cortisol is an alarm bell. And when that alarm bell rings, your liver responds by dumping its emergency stores of glucose right into your bloodstream. I was causing my own blood sugar spikes first thing in the morning just by drinking a glass of ice water. The third mistake was how I drank. On the rare occasions I did feel thirsty, usually late in the afternoon after a walk, I would go to the kitchen and drink 2 huge glasses of water back to back. I would chug it thinking I was doing myself a favor by catching up for the day. If you have ever lived in the desert, or even if you have just seen a patch of dirt during a long August drought, you know what happens to the earth. It bakes. It turns into something resembling concrete. If you take a heavy bucket of water and dump it right on top of that baked earth, it doesn't soak in. It runs right off the surface down the driveway and into the gutter. The water was there, but the ground was too hardened to accept it so fast. Our intestines are the same way. As we age, our digestive tract can only absorb a small amount of water at a time, maybe 6 or 8 ounces every 20 minutes. If you dump 20 ounces of water into your stomach all at once, your body can't process it. It just passes straight through to your bladder, and you end up in the bathroom 20 minutes later. You haven't hydrated your cells at all. You have just taken a quick trip to the toilet. The roots of your system are still completely dry. Proper hydration isn't a flash flood. It is a slow, steady, gentle rain throughout the day. Laura didn't just point out what I was doing wrong. She sat down with a piece of paper and wrote out a very specific routine. She called it a protocol, but I just call it a habit. It involved changing when I drank, how much I drank, and what was in the water. What you ignore today can limit you tomorrow. I decided right then, at that kitchen table, that I was not going to let stubbornness dictate my future. I was going to try it her way. The first change was the water itself. Laura explained that plain tap water, or even the expensive filtered stuff in the plastic bottles, is essentially empty. It is wet, yes, but it is missing the spark. She told me that our cells don't just open up because water is nearby. The water needs a key to turn the lock, and those keys are minerals. Electrolytes. Magnesium, potassium, a little bit of sodium. Without those minerals, the electrical charges in our cells don't fire properly. The water just washes through your system without actually getting inside the cell walls where the hydration is needed to make the insulin receptors work. I went to the local health food store and bought a small glass bottle of liquid trace mineral drops. It cost me maybe $12 and it lasts for months. The instruction was simple. Every time I filled my large water pitcher on the counter, I added a few drops of these minerals. You can't really taste it. Maybe a faint hint of saltiness if you look for it, but that tiny addition changed the structure of the water I was drinking. It turned dead water into working water. The next change was the timing, and this was the hardest part to get used to. The new rule was this: immediately upon waking up, before I went to the bathroom, before I turned on the coffee pot, before I looked at the news, the very moment my feet hit the floor, I had to drink 12 ounces of room temperature water with those mineral drops in it. After 7 or 8 hours of sleep, your body has gone a long time without fluid. You continue to lose moisture all night through your breath and through your skin. By the morning, your blood has literally thickened. It is sludgy. This is why morning blood pressure is often higher, and it is why morning blood sugar can be so stubborn. The thick blood can't move the insulin around effectively. Drinking that room temperature water first thing in the morning rehydrates the blood immediately. It thins it out. It allows it to flow easily again. It gently wakes up the metabolism without shocking the system with cold, and it prevents that morning cortisol spike that tells the liver to dump more sugar. The second timing rule was about meals. I used to drink water while I ate. Laura told me to stop doing that. She told me to drink 8 ounces of water exactly 30 minutes before I sat down for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 30 minutes. Not right before and not during. There's a mechanical reason for this. When you drink water 30 minutes before a meal, it gives your stomach time to prepare. It starts activating digestive enzymes. But most importantly, for someone watching their blood sugar, it slows down the rate at which food empties from your stomach into your small intestine. When food moves more slowly out of the stomach, the carbohydrates you eat are absorbed much more gradually into the bloodstream. Instead of a sharp, violent spike in blood sugar after a meal, you get a gentle rolling hill. Your pancreas, even an older, tired pancreas, has a much better chance of keeping up with a gentle hill than it does with a sudden mountain peak. The final part of the habit was filling the gaps. I started drinking 6 to 8 ounces of water mid-morning around 10:30 and again mid-afternoon around 3:30. Small amounts, just a few swallows, keeping the gentle rain falling. Keeping the blood volume consistent so the sugar wouldn't concentrate as the day wore on. I will be completely honest with you about what happened when I started doing this. The first week was miserable. I felt like I was spending my entire day walking down the hallway to the bathroom. My body had been in drought mode for so many years that my kidneys had adjusted to functioning with very little water. They were used to holding on to everything. When I suddenly started giving my body all this fluid, my system didn't know what to do with it. It just flushed it right out. I called Laura on the 4th day and told her I was quitting. I told her I couldn't live my life tied to a toilet seat. She laughed. Not an unkind laugh, but the laugh of a nurse who has heard it 1,000 times. She told me to be patient. She said my body was just recalibrating. The dried out sponges inside me were slowly softening up, but they couldn't absorb everything yet. She promised me that if I stuck with it, my bladder would adjust. My kidneys would relax and my cells would start holding the water. I trusted her. I pushed through the annoyance. By the middle of the second week, she was right. The constant urgency faded. My body realized that the drought was over. It realized that water was going to be consistently available, so it stopped panicking and started actually using the fluid. The bathroom trips went back to a normal, manageable routine. But it was in the third week that the real shift happened. I remember waking up on a Thursday morning. I sat on the edge of the bed. I did the routine. I washed my hands. I pricked my finger. I waited the 5 seconds. The number on the screen was 124. I just sat there staring at it. I hadn't seen a number in the 120s in over a year. I thought the machine was broken. I almost tested a different finger just to be sure. But the next morning it was 118. The morning after that it was 122. My fasting blood sugar, the number that had been tormenting me for years, had dropped by an average of 50 points. I hadn't changed my medication. I was still eating the exact same chicken and broccoli. I was still taking my evening walks. The only variable that had changed in my entire life was the temperature, the timing, and the mineral content of the water I was putting into my body. I had finally given my cells the moisture they needed to become flexible again. The doors were unlocking. The insulin was finally able to do the job it was designed to do because the rigid membranes had softened. But the numbers on the machine were only half the story. The real transformation was how I felt inside my own head. For years I had been living with a sort of heavy mental fog, a slowness, a feeling that I was always wading through deep water just to get my thoughts organized. I had chalked it up to being in my late 70s. I thought mental decline was just part of the package. But as the weeks went on and my body finally stayed hydrated, that fog lifted. It was like someone had opened a window in a dusty room and let a strong breeze blow through. My brain, which is mostly water anyway, was finally getting the fluid it needed to operate. My energy in the afternoons didn't crash the way it used to. Even the joints in my knees felt a little less stiff when I walked because the cartilage finally had enough lubrication. I learned something profound from this experience, something I wish I had understood 30 years ago when I was teaching health classes. We spend so much time focusing on the complex interventions. We obsess over the exact grams of carbohydrates. We track the side effects of 3 different prescriptions. We buy expensive monitors and special diabetic foods. We look for complicated solutions to our problems. And while we are busy managing the complex things, we completely ignore the most basic fundamental requirement of the human machine. We try to run the engine without oil, and then we blame the engine when it stalls. This habit did not cure my diabetes. Let me be very clear about that. I still have to be careful about what I eat. I still take my medication every day. If you are on medication, you do not stop taking it. You do not change your doctor's plan without talking to them first. Especially if you have heart issues or kidney disease where fluid retention is a specific danger, you must have that conversation with your physician. But what this simple habit of structured hydration did was optimize the environment inside my body. It gave my medication a fighting chance to actually work. It gave my natural insulin a flexible door to walk through. It gave me my confidence back. It gave me the peace of mind to look out my living room window and know that I am doing everything in my power to protect my independence. I am not fighting a losing battle anymore. The rules aren't changing in the dark. I was doing it wrong for decades. I was counting coffee as water. I was shocking my system with ice. I was chugging when I should have been sipping. I was letting my body turn to dry earth. You don't have to make that same mistake. You don't have to live with the heavy weariness of numbers you can't control. The water is right there in your kitchen. The minerals cost less than a few cups of coffee. The timing just takes a little bit of attention. It is a small thing. But after 60, the small things are what keep us standing strong. The independence we all want to keep is protected in these tiny, quiet habits we build for ourselves. Start tomorrow morning. Room temperature, a pinch of minerals, before your feet have even figured out what day it is. Give your body the moisture it needs to do the hard work of keeping you alive. There is still time to change the environment inside of you. There is still time to give your engine what it needs. You have the capacity to do this. Take care of yourselves. Look out for each other. I'll see you next time.